And it was an absolute disaster for Mercedes and for Ferrari in the first practice session of the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix. All the upgrades that Ferrari said they had coming, changing the side pods, did absolutely nothing. And many people say that first practice is not always an indication because people and teams are trying to set up their car correctly, but it usually indicates that if your system or new upgrades are going to work, it's at least going to show a little bit. Ferrari immediately going 8th with Charles Leclerc and 9th with Carlos Sainz, over a second off the pace. Red Bull being absolutely dominant again. Max Verstappen opening his lead. He was almost 8/10 faster in the first practice to Sergio Perez. And to go against what I just said in the last video, the Ocon and Gasly in the Alpines are staying totally tight, totally fast. They have qualified in the first practice in 3rd for Ocon, reviving his 3rd position in Monaco, and 5th for Pierre Gasly. Somehow Nick De Vries was able to go in between them into the AlphaTauri. That might just be a one-off. Like I said, practice is not always indicative of everything. But for teams with such upgrades, and even the Mercedes, Russell 10th, Lewis Hamilton 12th. These additions onto these cars, these upgrades, have done absolutely nothing for this team. It might have even done a little bit more for them on a street circuit, but the Spanish Grand Prix is so much more open. There's so much longer straightaways, and it just seems like a total disaster. It seems nothing has gone the way of Mercedes or Ferrari to chase the Red Bulls. And if the Red Bulls win this race, it will be an extension of their 7-race in a row win to an 8th race in a row, and I believe the record is 11 or 12 in the late 1980s for McLaren between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. So I've been telling people lately that if the reliability issues with Red Bull have been completely ironed out from last season, which it seemed like they had after the first couple of races where they had a couple DNFs, and then the rest of the season nothing happened, it seems like it's just been completely perfect. I think Adrian Newey, for all the great achievements, for the Williams, for the McLarens, he started out in IndyCar with aerodynamicists. He wrote his dissertation in college on ground effects. The biggest gap between all these cars and the new design of the Formula One vehicle is ground effects. It's how things, how aerodynamicists and air moves through the ground of the car to allow it to move at a fast pace. And that is Adrian Newey, an already genius, his specialty. So this is possibly the greatest car ever created. Sergio Perez only narrowly beat out Ocon for 2nd. So maybe Alpine has finally figured it out. A lot of people said it was a great move for Alonso, go to Aston Martin after they saw the results. Many people like me were skeptical. You're going away from Alpine that seems to be improving to an Aston Martin that seemed to be fading. But Lance Stroll's dad has put so much investment into that team and personnel. He's gotten from Red Bull and other teams super special personnel that they've made a really great car. But out of nowhere with Alpine in Monaco and Alpine now, and it didn't seem like they really added any upgrades. I think they're just finally figuring out, because they did have a solid team last season, and for them to fall off was kind of unexpected, but maybe they're kind of getting a feel for their car, usually by the Spanish Grand Prix. For a lot of people who haven't been watching Formula One for a long time, the Spanish Grand Prix is kind of the stage where people start figuring themselves out. It's after Monaco, it's after a couple street circuits, a couple of regular Formula One circuits. It's right around this time that people really start figuring out what is working with the car, what isn't working with the car. They're set up for qualifying, and they're set up pace for racing, which can be very different than qualifying, because you can get a great qualifying position and not have the speed over an entire race through that many laps. But it'll be interesting to see. We'll have a second practice come up, and a lot of this could be just posturing and stuff, but to be that slow, it's not like they were even in the mix in 5th or 6th. It seems like they've actually gotten slower, both of the teams, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me. But we'll see. Practice 2 is coming up in about an hour, and then you have practice 3 tomorrow. But it is looking like this is going to be a complete domination, barring some huge difference or changes or understanding of the vehicles going into qualifying tomorrow, and we'll have to see. And Nick DeVries putting it up there. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda landed himself all the way down in 14. So that could be a one-off, but we'll have to see. It looks like it's going to be hopefully a more exciting Grand Prix than this, but it's looking like Red Bull domination off the bat. I'm hoping the teams can find a way. And can Alpine become, the top third team? Will they replace Aston Martin? Can they challenge Ferrari and Mercedes for the top two teams if they can consistently be this high up in qualifying and maintain it over race pace? We'll have to see.